Welcome back to the Weekend Report. I'm Masachaba Mposwa. For nearly 20 years, the Tygerberg Raceway in Kraaifontein brought people together, racers, spectators, families and small businesses. But in July 2020, all that ended when a violent land invasion unfolded. Within a week, the entire raceway was gone, occupied instead by a land invasion. Take a look at this.
Protest action coupled with illegal land occupations have been continuing in the area for weeks.
The attack on the Tygerberg Raceway was probably the most violent.
We've seen in the past couple of years an increase in land invasions, unlawful occupations.
Hordes and hordes of angry protesters.
The land invaders attacked one of our staff members with a petrol bomb.
All spheres of government and especially the ruling parties is involved in this.
Of course, the situation with regards to land, illegal land occupations have been ongoing in areas such as Kraaifontein.
The complete racetrack is gone in a week.
We speak now to commentator and filmmaker Joe Emilio. Joe, good morning. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much, Joe. Firstly, you say while South Africans feared expropriation without compensation, the real theft had already started, quietly, legally, and nobody even noticed. Joe, could you take us back there in the interest of our viewers? Could you unpack the events that transpired at the Tygerberg Raceway?
Sure. I encourage anyone who's watching this to go check out the documentary as I go into a deep dive about those questions and why I made that statement. But in brief, basically in 2020, July of 2020, there was commotion, a protest, but also at the same time an attempt of land invasion, which Chris Liebenberg, the former owner of the raceway, tried his best to protect his land, or rather the property. And, police were involved, law enforcement were involved, but the South African Human Rights Commission at some point got involved as well, but actually prevented the city and police from helping Chris to prevent these land invaders from destroying his property, because that's exactly what they did. They came in, you'll see visuals, you saw some of the visuals now, of these land invaders taking apart his land, destroying the property completely, and leveling it to where there was just nothing left. And it is an atrocity. It is totally unfair. He's never been compensated. No one's helped him. And the documentary speaks to that. And yeah, that's pretty much what happened in a very short amount of time. Within a week, the raceway was completely gone.
Yeah. Now, Joe, you see it as a land grab, but does this not speak to the housing crisis in the Western Cape?
I'm so happy you bring that up, because it is exactly the housing individuals that were robbed of an opportunity. Because in the documentary, I do explore the fact that the raceway was seen as, or marked for housing, actually, and there the city was in talks with Chris. Now, Chris in the documentary does mention that he believed the land wasn't fit for housing because of the water level on the land. If you dug so much as 50 meters, you would hit water, which means that it's not suitable for housing. Now, I did reach out to the city of Cape Town to discuss this, and they told me something else. They said, no, we had inspectors go and we believed it was right for housing, and they gave me a whole list of things as to why it would be good for housing. But at the end of the day, what seems to be happening is every time there's land earmarked for housing, because it's not just the raceway, it's other places as well that get earmarked for housing, it seems that there are nefarious individuals that catch wind of this, and then a land invasion happens, which robs those that are waiting on the waiting list. It's a complete injustice. The system is rigged, even against the poor.
Now, the documentary also explores the growing trend of shack farming. Tell us more about this.
So yes, J.P. Smith basically brought that up. I didn't know about it until I interviewed him, where he's met certain individuals who shack farm, which is basically a syndicate that basically produce shacks en masse. When a land invasion is happening, they will then go to individuals and poor individuals, and they will say, okay, we're going to mark off this piece of land, we'll build you a shack here, and we'll pay you, the person who's going to live in that shack needs to pay the shack farmer 5,000 Rand or 15,000 Rand or whatever have you, and they must pay it off monthly. JP speaks to this in the documentary, but there's also other syndicates that in other areas that produce it in mass, where, for example, if there's a land that they want to invade, meters or a bit far away, they have a house where they're basically building these shacks, putting it on a bucky, taking the bucky with the shack out to the land where they want to invade, and then plonk the shack on the land, and there you go. You've got a shack ready to be occupied. And there's also visuals in the documentary showing how some of these individuals basically move shacks, panels of shacks at night under the guise of darkness, so that they can't get caught and that city officials can't see them, and erect shacks overnight.
Now, tell us more.
It's a very lucrative business.
Yeah, tell us more about your choice of contributors and their various perspectives that they brought through the interviews that you conducted with them.
Well, I interviewed, Chris Liebenberg, the former owner of the raceway, and his friend Gary Fleming, who is a motorsport commentator, also a motorsport buff. He knows almost everything about the motorsport in South Africa. I believed it was important to have the former owner of the raceway explain his point of view, tell the world what he experienced. I thought that was a very important and powerful story to tell. The rest came as I explored. Basically, I spoke to legal experts such as Martin van Staden from the Free Market Foundation, Mark Oppenheimer, an advocate, and they know the Constitution and the PI Act quite well. I also spoke to, I tried to speak to the city of Cape Town to get their perspective as well. Only JP Smith was willing to speak to me. I was also speaking to the Informal Settlement Department, but they only replied via email. And that's when I also spoke to the DA spokesperson on human settlements, Liolo, and as well as referendum parties, Robert King. And the only reason why I spoke to them is because in my research, I found out that they are the DA is trying to amend the PI Act on a national level, whereas the referendum party is trying to repeal it in the Western Cape. So I thought that might be an interesting point of view to bring up in the documentary.
Now, Joe,
and I also I also spoke to a woman who wanted to be anonymous, but she is someone who's heavily involved in the housing crisis and has been very involved in informal settlements in terms of helping those that are poor and needing toilets and stuff like that. So she was very willing to talk, but she only spoke anonymously for her protection.
You're a first-time filmmaker, and your film garnered with 60,000 views in the first 24 hours, which is quite impressive. What inspired you to tell this particular story?
A few things, but the main thing that inspired me to tell this story was I'm just a curious person. I wanted to know, I think I saw someone on Twitter actually, or X, by the name of LP. I forget his handle exactly, but his name is LP. And he put out a thread of all the towns in South Africa or Western Cape that he'd basically go back in Google Earth to like the 2000s, early 2000s, somewhere there. And he would show how, it was normal land, greenery, and then later on there was a land grab, and he would show the before and after. And I reported on this on my YouTube channel, and then I said to audience. I was like, would you guys like me to do a deeper dive into this to find out why? Because I was also curious. How can it be so easy for individuals to just take over land, set up a shack, and almost seem like nothing happens to them? We are supposedly in a democracy, a constitutional democracy, and yet this is happening where property of any kind, whether it be municipal, whether it be private, whether it be government, is just not protected. And that really spiked my interest. And I decided to use the Raceway story because it was quite a, I live in Cape Town, and during lockdown, I remembered that story, and I thought it would be a very interesting story. I researched very quickly and found out that Chris was still alive, still in South Africa. So I thought, okay, let me reach out to him. If he says no, then this story is probably dead in the water. But luckily, he said yes, he would love to tell his story. And that's how it started. And that's when I really started to research and get into the depth of it, and found out about the PI Act, found out about all this other nefarious stuff from interviewing all the individuals that were in the documentary.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people see the film?
The people can see the film on my YouTube channel, Newsflash with Joe Emilio, or they can visit the website to the documentary, which is stolenground.co.za.